this is 400 rather. Start at 220. I'm gonna bevel this first. So whenever we're moving, especially from the diamond saw to the next pads, you always want to bevel. But as you're moving through these stages, you're essentially going to be beveling at one stage higher than whatever you're going to. So if I'm going to the 220, I'm going to bevel at 400. If I'm going to the 600, I'm going to bevel at well, this is technically a little bit finer grit than 220 or than 600. We won't be using this to bevel on. So this one that you see at 600, we won't be using to bevel on, but we'll be using a different method for getting this a little bit closer to polish. So we're going to start by beveling the edge, holding it at a 45-degree angle to the vertical, and also turning it as we're going. So start turning when you set it down and be turning when you lift it off. If you stop for even a fraction of a second, it's going to make a divot. You turn the water on first back here, and then turn the machine on. You should see it start to spray and continue to spray. I also like to keep like my thigh pushed up against the basin here, and keep my elbows and forearms into my sides here so that I'm pretty stable. So between the beveling and the rough grinding, these are the things that will probably take you the longest. The stage that should take you the longest is going through these first two, because it's going to take a while to go through and bevel this until you get all the chip out of it. The beveling both removes that sort of visible record of it chipping as it was cut. So it's an aesthetic thing, but it's also structural, because if I take something that has a bunch of chipped edges and go to that rough grind, chances are it's going to take a huge chunk out of it. Anytime we end up with something that is like an acute angle, and even more obtuse angles and right angles, when you grind them, especially on those electroplated metal pads, it has a lot of friction, and it can very easily, with that friction, take a huge chunk out. So that's why we bevel, to essentially protect it from having a bigger chunk taken out.
Should we bevel before we even go to the lap line?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the very first step is bevel.
Yeah. The first step is after you diamond saw to bevel.
Okay.
So to speed this up and show you this other technique for flattening, because that pad is not all that fast, this is actually a faster way, but it's a bit more of a difficult way to be able to flatten this out. Get yourself a Magnum Sharpie. Because this is how I know if I've gone all the way through from one grit level to the next. I can also, so to be able to see the surface after it's been ground, I always want to dry it off. That's what the air is for. And it can also help to dry off the Sharpie so it doesn't wash off. So also using this 180, I'm essentially going to hold this, if we consider the horizontal, I'm going to hold this at a 90-degree vertical. Same thing, I have to turn when I'm setting down, turn when I pick it up. Just like having a very low profile piece on the lap grinder, having a low profile piece and doing this on the belt sander is pretty difficult to hold on to. So you know, you want to kind of like mock how you're going to sort of do this without grinding your fingernails, your knuckles, stuff like that. So I'm essentially same thing, going to touch down, turn. I can't really hold this with 2 hands and do it. Well, maybe I can. I'll do it with 2 hands. But I'm going to touch down and turn. So you can see this is also a way to keep it relatively flat. It doesn't keep it totally flat, but it stays relatively flat as long as I'm turning when I touch down and turning when I lift off. I'm essentially holding it against a rigid plane here, so it can't really divot unless I stop. Even if I stop for a fraction of a second, it's going to create a divot in here. So doing this method, you really have to kind of focus on like touch down while you're turning, lift off while you're turning. So this can be a quicker way. This is also this is actually the 180 belt. If you move that up to like the 80 belt over here, it'll go even a little bit faster. This is a faster way, but it's a little bit more difficult than just doing it on the grit grinder. So you can sort of choose which method you want to use. So now I'm going. Do you have a question from somebody? Okay, thought I heard something.
Can you do like angle, like cuts with that one, like where you put a curve in that rather than having it just straight flat on the belt?
Yeah, this is just to move it from the surface from the saw to the next grit level. The alternative is that you can use that 60 pad down there. It's visibly and tactilely more aggressive, but these belts have like fresh. Many of these belts have like more fresh grit to them. So essentially, what the surface of these look like is all of these like really like pointy edges when they're fresh, and then as they wear down, it's still a hard surface. It's still a diamond surface, but they start to round out and they're less effective. That pad has been here at least 10 years. It still works. It's a very aggressive pad, but it doesn't work as fast as like a brand new 80 belt works, just because of how those microscopic points look. So this process goes a bit faster. This keeps it flatter. You can't not make it flat with the lap pad. All right, so I'm just going to keep this same belt on for now, just to for time's sake. But I'm essentially just going to round this whole thing out, and for the most part, I'm going to be using the rigid part to be able to take down larger amounts of material. Once I start to do that, then I'll smooth it by going above or below. So the above or below is the flexible point that will adapt and sort of curve to your piece. The rigid part will not adapt or curve to your piece, but it grinds away faster. So you can start to see what this is looking like as I'm shaving it down. So it's kind of angular looking. You can see it's like almost faceted looking. That's because I'm trying to keep it moving a little bit, but mostly I'm just trying to put pressure on it to make that work quicker. Everything but the saw, it helps to push to speed up grinding. Come on through. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. It helps to push through, but I don't want to sacrifice my fingernails, my knuckles, or my piece by pushing so hard that I'm like gonna slip or gonna lose control of my piece. So, so budget yourself the amount of pressure that you need to use to be able to keep control of your piece and not slip, but also have a little bit of pressure on the piece. So I'll continue to do this. You can see I'm just sort of starting here, and I'll start to spread that pressure out in just a minute. So the first part is just removing material, and now if you can see, I'm going just below this rigid part, so it's not flexing a lot, but it's flexing a little bit. That's essentially blending, so that's like blending those rigid parts into the smooth part, so it's going to start to sort of like form to that smoother edge. Yeah, I essentially go down until I have a nice rounded surface or whatever I'm looking for. And then once I get through this stage that's 180, I mark it all up, move down, so on and so forth. By the time I'm done and ready to polish, I'm pretty much going to be polishing the entire surface. So that is just part of like taking material off and smoothing, or if you get like, if you like get a dent in your piece, usually you have to do this, like if you have it, you let go of it, you take a chip out or something, you're usually going to have to like smooth it out in some way. So what starts off as taking a little bit of material off is pretty soon you're going to be polishing the entire thing. As long as you go through the steps and pay attention to where you're at, and also consider that when you think that you're done with one stage, go twice as long. If you do that, the whole process after you've done the initial shaping or the sort of rough grinding, the rest of the stages should go pretty quickly. Don't get in a rush. When you rush through those next stages, which is what is kind of defined as the stage grinding or stage sanding, moving through the next stages, essentially like taking it from one level to the next. You're not really removing material, you're just getting those surfaces finer and finer grit level. It can go really, really fast. By the end of this project, you should be able to make a window in like 30 minutes. In the beginning, it's probably going to take you a couple hours.
Can we go over using the lathe Monday?
Not yet.
Totally.
Yeah, we will.
For making
Okay, so I'm going to pick up now where I left off on this one that is at 220. I'll mark it all up. Move on to 300.
Sander, like I was telling you about earlier, he'll flat lap stuff with just the grid on like the table.
Yeah, totally.
And he'll like mark it up like that, and then he'll just be like on the table with that respective grid on the table or on like a flat surface.
We have all the stuff to do that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, hand lapping. But actually, this is the first semester that we're not doing it as like a required thing.
Yeah, I always thought it would seem like hella tedious, but I guess that's like the best way of getting it perfectly flat.
I think I mentioned that last class, right? Talking about grinding, hand lapping. It's in that book. I'll show you guys at some point. It is an important skill to learn because this doesn't make things totally flat. This makes things like visibly flat. But if you have a piece that you need to like sit on a really small base or something, maybe it's like a heavy piece and you need it to sit on a small base, it has to be perfectly flat or it will rock and then probably eventually fall over. So you have to handle it. Yeah. You have to be be able to hand lap. I mean, to do many things. Okay, so we'll go to the. I'm just gonna skip ahead to 600. I think that's should be fine.
The contents of the book on the canvas.
Yeah. So when I set the pad on, I want to center it over the center hole here. I want for these smoothing pads. So the third ones are called diamond smoothing pads. I don't need to use quite as much water, but I want it a little bit more than a drip. Just moving from the inside to the outside, applying pressure. Does help to push a little bit harder to get moving through it a bit quicker. So pass this around and you'll be able to see a few things here. We're just going to kind of move this through for demo's sake. But here, and then you should see kind of through the middle, there's a number of like just slightly more white, kind of like chalky looking scratches that move through it. Don't touch it. Don't touch the surface because the oil on your hand will fill in the top of it. Just hold it by the bottom and see if you can identify those things.
And then you can't laugh off the wheel, or